Good evening, morning, afternoon, whatever applies to you, and welcome back to yet another EuroLeague. I am joined, as always, by Mr. Keire and Nymaera to discuss all things LEC Finals and go over some of our personal LEC awards. I don't actually think they even do voting for LEC Versus, do they? I'm pretty sure there's no ballot or anything like that. So consider this the official awards.
I think
As
that's
everything else
really
we say
sad
is.
for the history keeping
Now, here's the
of
thing,
the
Keire.
of
Here's the thing.
esports. It's really awful.
I disagree, and I'll tell you why I disagree. One, because all their awards have always been cooked as fuck. They're super inaccurate. They're just garbage. There's like a couple of splits ever when you look at them and you're like, you know what? Fair enough. More or less, that's reasonable. But generally, the voting is fucking dog shit. I've seen Mickey X's ass in about 15 different All-Pro teams he shouldn't have been anywhere fucking near. So that shit's just run on name value. So I'm over it already. And also, on the flip side, Side Select was always doing their own award show. So, you go watch that instead. Actually, you can't. I've privated all the videos because YouTube is sending me threats and so on about, certain TOS things, whatever. Anyway, you can listen to them all on Spotify or other audio streaming services are
Crazy that a show
available.
with me on it isn't the reason that YouTube's going crazy. Like that is actually the ultimate. Like, if you could, what are those markets that you can bet on? What are they called?
What, Poly Market or...
Yeah, but I was trying to not name like the actual like branded one, not like
Right.
what they're called, but like predictive markets. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
It's like, will Keire Turbo will delete Rich's channel? Yes, no. And there was certain segments where I was up at like the high 80s, like 90s and stuff like that, and then
Yeah, we were about
While
to
we're
like
still there, we never dropped
launch
out
like
of
an
the red
after
zone.
dark raid on his server.
But yeah, anyway, the point is, if you go listen to those, you'll see that I always gave the perfect take on all the All-Pro and MVP stuff. So really, you don't need an official one.
Well,
I mean, what is official
but
anyway?
the reason that they're doing it less is because it got too saturated with three splits. This is another problem with three splits, where we had too many finals for every region, and then there's basically just too many awards, especially if you're doing all pro first, second, third for every split. There's just at that point you're naming like 9 teams in a year.
Well,
which
by the
is,
way, if you
It's
think
not-
there's
not
too many
casual
awards,
audience.
don't watch the side select ones because there's about 17
yeah, sure.
different awards.
No, but that's different because you do that vaguely once a year, right?
Sure.
The side select thing, right?
No,
but,
3
but,
times
and
a
I
year.
think I agree it's bad for history keeping. I would err on the side of it, but I also understand that I am not the casual audience where it would be oversaturated quite quickly, and then the individual awards then start to lose meaning. I can see the logic of that.
All-pro team, second team, MVP, regular splits, MVP, playoff MVP, done. There you go, that's it. Pack it up, boys. It's literally 11 awards every split.
But what
and then
about,
that's it. We're all good.
most ELO held, most annoying broadcast talent? Come on, you can't just, get rid of all
Hey,
the...
I'm down for them.
Yeah,
They have a
exactly.
place.
least annoying broadcast talent.
Yeah.
Hey,
least annoying broadcast
I'm a
talent.
successfable, like, at least one-time winner
Yeah,
of that award, I'll
multiple
have
time
you know.
winner again.
No,
all you go listen to those.
Back to back,
baby.
fucking
Back
go.
to
Holy
back.
shit, let's go.
It could be more. Could be more. Anyway, speaking of things that really do matter, my patented would you rather. It's similar-ish, kind of, but not really, to the one that I asked you and Sam when he was on, but with obviously, bit of a twist. And it goes as follows. Keire, would you rather, over the next 5 years, League of Legends falls into, like a full decline to the point of like being a peripheral esport? It'll be gradual over those 5 years, but basically it's becoming less and less relevant. Hey, this might be reality, who knows? But during this time, EU starts dominating internationally, or like being a massive factor. They are on par with LCK or whatever. So you're getting some Western versus Eastern bangers, let's say. Or that over the same period of time, the game randomly starts growing again at a rapid rate, but the entire West is just completely irrelevant during this time, and it's basically LCK split number 5 every time for Worlds or whatever. Maybe LPL making an appearance every now and then. So yeah, either EU starts becoming a massive factor on the world stage, but the game is kind of going StarCraft 2 mode a bit. So do we care that Stefano won? Yeah. Or that it's experiencing...
Stefano won before the Exodus.
The game was pretty cooked when he was like really in his pop though. It was already on the decline. Stefano,
No, StarCraft 2.
we're talking
Stefano
like
won before
2013. When's...
Yeah, so and Kespa don't leave until like 2016. It's
No,
Brian that
but I'm
wins.
not. I'm not talking. I'm talking about the popularity of the game. I'm not
Right.
saying the players are all leaving or whatever. I'm not saying EU's dominating because players have left or anything like that.
Oh,
I'm
right.
saying that the game, like as a product, is declining in viewership
Right,
and
okay, I get it.
popularity. So yeah, it becomes a more peripheral esport, or it becomes a more predominant esport, but the West is just
Good to
cooked.
watch, Rich. Using StarCraft 2 history analogies around me can be dangerous. You know what I mean? I'm
We
like,
figured this out before, yeah.
I'm like, what the? Right, that was StarCraft Brood War. Equally dangerous. It's like, I'm a man of many talents.
Hey,
So,
no
Rich, you
one.
can
All
answer
I
this
know
question.
is after Idris stopped streaming, no one on my side of the pod
Or,
gave a fuck about that
what
game.
about
So
what about Destiny? StarCraft
well,
2
he's still
Pro
going
League
strong.
Extraordinaire.
So if you want
What do
some
you mean? My favourite
inconsistent political
StarCraft 2.
takes, go
What,
tune into
what,
him.
my favourite StarCraft 2 player, Destiny, is still streaming, Rich? Is he winning? Is he winning in the game?
I
Yeah,
would say
okay.
he's
Anyway.
overall probably not winning in life, but who knows? That's just more of
You can
an
update me
opinion, a hot
after the
take.
podcast. You
Although
know,
actually,
the poly market's moving all the way up right now.
I did see a good debate where he did dismantle a right-wing grifter yesterday, so that's worth checking out at the very least. Anyway, moving on, Keire, what of the two options are you taking?
Rex, you could answer this one for me. I don't actually care who.
I know, yeah, true.
Or not.
I didn't
So
think
I have
this
actually
through.
no care for European League of Legends whatsoever, to be honest. Like for a large period of the time, it was my fourth favorite region. I would describe it as my third favorite region, but yeah, here we are.
But don't you equally not care about how popular the game is?
No, but it's better if it's more popular, right? Okay, because of like all the like intrinsic like buy-in, like the events, the venues, the scale. That's all sick, and you need popularity for that. You know what I mean? Like they tried throwing money at Hon. You can't throw money. You have to have some degree of like public like buy-in, and that's why League was like sick. You know what I mean? When we were sitting, Rich in like France, you know what I mean, and we were watching the semi-finals, but like the viewing experience wasn't as good as home. It was literally at 45 degrees. It was a
Yeah,
fucking
true.
banger. When Ben threw his jacket and that stadium erupted, mate. That was like, I remember a person who I've been to like Rangers Celtic. That was football-esque, as in
Yeah,
the
it was good.
sound, the vibration. I was like, holy! Like, see when people are like esports or like sports. That was one of those moments. Yes, smaller stadium, like the thing, but the emotions, everyone around you, you're looking around you, everyone's up in their seats and everything. That was one of those moments. And when you get those buy-ins, it is like, bro, like the aura of like Ben that like day, his opponent had already lost. Like he had the scale of it was insane. So that's my shout.
No, fair enough. No, yeah, and obviously that is Worlds. It's a bit different in terms of you know what we might have seen this weekend, for example. But yeah, no, semis was awesome, and the final honestly was an amazing product. Like I can't lie. Like I think last year's final was really fucking good. But yeah, Nymaera, what do you think?
Wait, last year's final at Worlds or?
Yeah. Like the whole as a production. I mean, the final itself was pretty good as well, right? But.
Okay, so I got into this in a few ways because part of me is like, well, you know, if it gets really massive again, but only really in the East, technically that should be better for me as someone who's an analyst on you know, on LPL and stuff. But that didn't really help me before that much, you know. So I suppose that's kind of agnostic. I think I've kind of come to the acceptance now that it doesn't matter how much I know about the LPL, I'm going to be relegated to someone will send me a DM before an event rather than actually being at the event, which is a bit sad. Hey, it is what it is. So yeah, and then the other side of it is, well, if it crashes and burns, you know, at least I've kind of already had my out. You know, I'm doing more content, I'm doing more streaming. I'm trying to find a way out. So I suppose that's I'm kind of free from that now. So on a personal level, I'm like, well, actually, either way, yeah. I mean, I think I would prefer. Yeah.
You could make a bunch of like going out the door content on EU's amazing triumphs at the dying death of League of Legends or whatever, which would probably still do well as historical pieces, even if the game itself isn't that popular.
Yeah.
So I always used to come across those videos where it's like, when one man, like in unheard of in Rainbow Six, did this, blah, blah, blah. I'll click it. I don't fucking watch that game. I've got no clue about that, but that sort of stuff tends to do.
Oh yeah, well, I've done that with a whole host of stuff. I just like well-produced kind of content by people who care about the scene, which is why, I mean, regardless of how the game does, you know, League is a very large part of my life, and I would be there in some capacity with it, regardless, because it has taken up all of my adult life. Really has involved League in some way. I think I would prefer it to get larger because for me, again, I don't really care where it's large. To a certain extent, I do because it's nice to have that social connection around the game, which I've talked about previously with the single player versus multiplayer game thing that we did last time we were on the show. I think I prefer it to go larger. Speaking of kind of those live experiences, when I was casting out in China in the arena, even though I wasn't, on the actual in-house speakers or anything, it was so special just hearing the crowd behind the motions of the game. There is something just animalistic about it. You mentioned like the bin jacket throw thing. One thing which sticks with me is Uzi's last ever series, and in that game where they won the one game, I mean, obviously the Shy was on the other side, huge amounts of fans for him there too. But when Uzi did anything in that game, there was like the one time they won the game with a triple kill of his down the mid lane. Just it felt like I was going to get hearing damage, and that was through headphones. It felt like I was going to get hearing damage. It was that loud. There was something very special about that kind of amount of people caring about that game. There is something about the sense of scale which does add something to it. Would I still be there even if there weren't that huge crowd? Yes, I would be because I care about the game, but it does add that extra special factor to it, and I don't really care where that comes from.
Yeah. No. So go on, Keire.
I was gonna say, no, like you're talking about like hanging moments, right? It wasn't even like that loud like a moment and all that. And it's just like I love sharing this like story. I think you've done a short or a video that covers that. The craziest moment in like esports history, and it's funny because not even involving Faker, is when fucking Daddy gives Pawn the jacket. When Daddy
the general's jacket.
When he gives when they lose to White for the first time at Worlds, and he gives them the jacket to take with him into fucking finals, bro, that was something like you're actually just like holy shit. And remember, Pawn's about to go and win Worlds with all of Daddy's teammates that like he loved, but they couldn't be in a team together. Too many cooks in the kitchen, right? And Daddy himself was never going to win Worlds, so it's like him symbolically like hanging it over to like Pawn to go and do it. Like you're actually just like, oh, that is so crushing. That's like one of those.
Still my most watched esports short. Now, most of the time when I do content, I'll have like a sitting number, regardless of how many numbers that is at the time. It depends how well the algorithm's doing for me. If I add Faker in, it times 10. So I expect it to do 10 times better, and that has actually held pretty fast and true for everything I've done. That one broke that rule because it's just such a good story. That it was just so entertaining. And I mean, for those of you that want to see it, it's only like a couple minutes long, but I have a short on my TikTok and my YouTube shorts and wherever. It's just a really compelling story. There is something just very cool about those moments for sure. That felt like it was. That to me was when I believed that League was the spiritual success. It's kind of like the golden throne of the #1 esport in the world from something like StarCraft. I was sat there and I'm like, okay, this is special now. That was a special moment.
And a beautiful story of content triumphing over clickbait. There you go. Nymaera cynically putting Faker in every single short. And then, the great irony, it's Dade who comes up clutch. So there you go. Anyway, speaking along similar lines, I do have to address the elephant that was nowhere to be seen in the room, because no one was fucking seen in the room, because that stadium was empty at the weekend. I'm sorry, that stadium was empty all fucking weekend, and we have to talk about this for a few different reasons. First of all, I just want to put this out there. The amount of cope that I saw from people trying to like brush this off as like a nothing burger was like insane. By the way, I'm not trying to say this is like the biggest deal ever, but you guys really need to stop like just lying about what's happening here. Firstly, it's not just one angle, it's not just one stand, it is not fucking 80% sold out. It was more than half empty basically the whole weekend. Finals was a bit busier, but all the people who told me on the Friday it would have been, oh, just wait until tomorrow. It'll be different tomorrow. It's because Barcelona are playing. It's like, right, okay. Was it any better tomorrow? Was it fuck? Was it exactly the same? Yes, it was. Did Barcelona play back-to-back days, Keire? I don't follow Barcelona too closely, so I can't be sure. I'm going to guess that they probably did not play back-to-back games. So, yeah, I don't know what they're going on about there. But yeah, this is... when people start whipping out excuses that we have never before complained about like traditional sports getting in the way of like esports viewership. Like, let's be real, the overlap isn't really there, and the people who do care about both usually have two monitors. That's usually how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, this was just whatever. Anyway, obviously I don't actually care about a bunch of terminally online people defending the indefensible. I don't actually really care about that. But obviously what is a bit worrying is how unbelievably dead that stadium was. Now, this is something we've actually talked about before on this show in terms of like balancing how to get the best atmosphere, if that even is the goal. Like, is it better to have like a smaller intimate arena where every seat is filled and maybe the acoustics are really good, or do you want to have a bigger arena and risk there being loads of empty seats but overall you get more people through the door? Like, what is the approach there? But again, for me, the overarching thing is I am concerned about this being not the be all and end all, but it is a barometer for the state of League of Legends currently. And keep in mind, this was in Spain. Spain is one of the two countries we always hold up as, well, the real hardcore fans are in Spain. The real hardcore fans are in France. Like, those are the two countries we've always hung our hat on in terms of like, well, you want a reliably big crowd?
Yeah.
Well, don't spread it around. Don't go to Athens. Don't go to Spain. Just put it back in Spain. Put it back in France. Like, that's always been a line that we've gone with. And, well, I mean, again, if that's what you've been told and you've never watched live League of Legends before, you're probably sat there thinking, fucking hell, how bad would this be if it was in, I don't know, like Switzerland or something? And the answer is probably pretty fucking bad. But yeah, Keire, you look like you want to chime in.
Yeah,
Hit me.
because I think you're on the ball, but I think there's another way to think about that. As we've made League of Legends in Europe, particularly more bipartisan, more nationalist based, it has the downside of if Mad Lions had made the final, I think there would have been more fans there. I'm not saying the place would have been crazy, but you're actually getting into the thing of like, if you're a Mad Lions fan or you're a Spanish fan, why do you want to be there to see KC potentially win? And even at like, and then you could just stay at home and watch like G2 win. It's like the same. It'd be a bit like some like the like football fans. Would you actually go to like your rivals like?
This is the thing though. Like that is obviously what you're saying is obviously true, but in terms of the logistics of how it would actually work, though, I'm not sure that it would really work because, I mean, if you wanted tickets for the final, presumably you're not buying them on the day. You're buying them ahead of time. And are you really going to buy tickets for the final? Like, say, you know, I'm going to make an event of this. And then because your team's not there, you're like, fuck it. All the plans I made, if I booked a hotel, I'm just not going to do it anymore because my team's not in the final. Like,
bro,
do
the
people
tickets
really
are like
do that?
$15. The tickets are like
okay.
15 bucks.
I thought that the tickets for this event were expensive. I thought that was I thought that was one of the complaints. So I was just looking at. So I didn't have full context. So I was just looking for a little bit of context on it. Apparently, there were some transport strikes which hit some people, but I don't think that would have been like huge numbers. I'm aware that there were some controversies around co-streamers in the venue. So Kometo got given a really bad setup, I believe, on the first day, and including stuff like they didn't give him a compressor with the microphone. The clean feed they had was so delayed that the crowd would give it away. So he didn't know what to do with that. And I think basically it went so poorly that he had actually cancelled appearing in a Mr. Beast video, like a big one, to be at the event. And he had initially chosen to be at the event. And I think, funnily enough, Ebai was actually going to be in the same video, and he did go and do that video. So Ebai, I think he was there for a bit of the event. I'm not, so someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure he was there for the whole event. But Kometo ended up leaving the event and going back to Paris because the setup was, I believe, quite poor and it was quite poorly handled. So I'm aware that at least that also hit things, but I don't think that would have hit the actual in-person crowd either as well. Realistically, these events are kind of, you should vaguely know what's going to happen like a couple of weeks leading up to it, right? Because that's when the tickets either go or they don't. I don't think
$60.
That's a lot. I don't know. So I don't know. I don't know what like concert tickets would be like, or like football tickets would be like. I mean, in the UK, $60 used to be expensive. It's not so much anymore.
That would be like an average price for a Premier League ticket, probably.
Someone needs to fucking fact check me, but like I think it was $60.
If that is the case, okay. I mean, but this is the thing that I was saying though, Keire, like whether it was $60 or a bit less or whatever it was, like when you're planning to go to an event like this anyway, typically you're not deciding on the day or just before. Usually you would plan a little bit in advance. So I don't think that really had a bet. I don't think whoever was in the final really had too much of a bearing of like who was there or not.
Yeah.
Are you really going to be like,
this is another thing too, actually. So someone had quite an insightful comment on that, which is one of the problems with the current format is that because the finals decider is taken apart, it like you take part in that like or rather, like the finals isn't decided for a long time, right? In terms of the actual matchup, that also changes who actually wants to travel to the events. I don't know how far in advance the finals teams were all decided, but I don't really know how you can fix that. At the end of the day, you have to have you have to qualify the teams going towards finals and the semifinals, whatever, late as possible. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you just do like lower bracket later on into it, but then I don't even think that fixes anything. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure why
pretty
it was
big
so
arena as
bad.
well.
Yeah, and I mean, Madrid was excellent last year. Paris was excellent last year. I thought that the rogue shows were actually going pretty well. So I was surprised to see, the upper circle not
Poorly
opened up.
advertised, maybe.
Maybe I don't know I don't know what it was like locally. Reminder, this is Badalona, not Barcelona, by the way. So it's kind of like one of the outer suburbs of Barcelona. It's not yeah, it's just not like directly in the city center, so it might have been harder to reach, and then transport strikes, blah blah blah. But I don't know how that would have affected marketing. So I have no idea how that went on kind of like a organizational side of it.
I mean, for me, there have been a lot of events in the last couple of years in Europe which have been like half full. I mean, this is not the first time I've made tweets about showing like swaths and swaths of empty seats. Like, it is an issue. I mean, right. By the way, for anyone who doesn't know, when you hire out a venue like this, typically, not always, but typically, you are doing so more than a year in advance. That is like standard procedure for something like this. About 12 months in advance, you would want to book a venue. So Riot obviously is making judgment calls as well based on what they think they can sell, what they think they can fill. And in the last, however many events, this is just a pure, or not a pure guess, but somewhat of a guess, the amount of times they've had to like just section off entire areas because they haven't sold enough tickets or done so ahead of time. It's fairly frequent at this point. Like the in-person live events are just not doing that well. And I remember, and by the way, just this I think really puts it into perspective. I always bring this event up. There was a regular season LEC, or at the time EU LCS game week, which was played at the O2 Arena in London. A 12,000
Wembley Arena.
Yeah, Wembley. Sorry, Wembley Arena.
So not Wembley Stadium, Wembley Arena. So
Yeah.
this is not the huge football stadium, but Wembley Arena.
I believe it is a 12,000 seater. I could be wrong.
It's big. I've seen a load of gigs there. It's big. Yeah.
I was at this event and it was heaving. It was actually you could not find an empty seat.
It was 2014 summer, and that was the time when Super Hot Crew had their Cassidy counter pick of Nocturne mid leaked. It's a very fun week. That's one to go back and watch. Very fun games.
Yep. Casted by Mr. D-Man and Joe Miller. D-Man and Quickshot, actually, if I'm not mistaken, which is an odd combo. Both play-by-play, but whatever.
Quickshot was color casting for that season, remember, because like there were too many play-by-plays, so he was a color caster back then.
Okay. But anyway, the point is, this is in the UK, which notoriously, I don't mean this in like a literal sense, but hates esports in the sense that we do not show up in droves to go to esports events. But
that's funny because we actually do now. Because you think about like MSI 23, fucking heaving, Worlds 25, heaving.
But
we had there's ALGS, which has been held there too and done very well. There's a lot of big esports events which are doing quite well in the UK.
But I can tell you for the MSI one, like the amount of internationals people that were there was like, I will say more than half of the people were non-UK.
Yeah, because
residents.
London is a very good hub for that. That's one of the reasons it does well, is because it has it's a really good city to travel to.
No, absolutely. But also because the interest itself was very international. The EU thing. Regular season week was actually almost exclusively. I shouldn't say exclusively. That's a ridiculous thing to say. But it was the vast majority were actually English people or people from the UK who went to that event.
Local audience.
Local audience, which is crazy. Like you would never ever in a million years be able to do that now. I went to a PUBG event in Berlin, which was held at the Mercedes-Benz Arena, and it was fucking packed. But almost everyone there was Asian. Like it was just because it's such a big game in Asia, and because Berlin's got a lot of flights going to it and whatever. People were able to fly over, but there were barely any Germans there. It was like all Asians, which again makes sense. And as you said, for MSI, so much international interest that there's a bunch of people from the UK, a bunch of people from Europe, but also a lot of people from Asia as well for that. So the point is, typically people from the UK are not the biggest esports supporters when it comes to live events, but that was a regular season LEC EU LCS game week, and it was fucking heaving, and I think they sold out like 8 to 12,000 seats, whatever it was. So yeah, we've come a long way, and not in a good way when it comes to live events, unfortunately, in Europe. As I said, something to keep an eye on, I guess, because the numbers obviously came out for this split as well. I believe it was either we were down 7 or 9%, I think it was, for the peak of the last finals or what have you at the same time last year. Things are not trending too wonderfully, but yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, I don't want to spend any more time talking about
Although
that.
it is worth noting, no, one last thing on that. It is worth noting that because we had a banger finals in LEC and LCK really didn't. We did actually end up being more. We had a higher peak than
That's
LCK
true.
in terms of the final viewership. So part of it's also game quality as well. We did have, actually 2 very good series back to back for the lower bracket finals and then the finals itself. 2 5-game bangers with notable teams. So I think that definitely made the event. The people that were there, and I was talking to Shocks about this because and a couple of people on the show, like the people that were there had a great time. So I hope that more people will get to experience that in the future too.
But one little thing on this, Rich, and it's a point of I think what I've discussed with MSI. I actually hopefully they keep the road shows more localized. Like, you know what I mean? This one's usually going to be somewhere in Spain. Another one's going to be somewhere in France or something, right? To give people a fucking half chance of of getting used to something. I think a big, massive detrimental effect that people just haven't given enough credence to is just the LEC's constant fucking changing of everything all the time, changing all the time, everything changing, format change, split changes, team changes, where 12 teams, 10 teams, 8 teams, fucking teams kazoo, teams in lower brackets, it's BO3s, BO5 weeks, I think that's, because for the casual viewer, they just want to be able to come in at an easy point and understand
go to an
where
event with
things
their
have come
mates
up.
and understand what they're watching. No, I
Watch
agree.
it,
I
yeah,
actually think
and
it's a really good point. I actually think even though this would be you could say this would be harsh on other places or whatever, what you should actually do, unironically, every year it should just be winter finals is in Paris. Every year, summer finals is in Spain or whatever. And then if Greek people or Polish people are like, hey, what about us? Then do your road shows there, and you can switch that up. But I think I actually agree. If you know way ahead of time, it's just a thing that EU winter is always in Paris or whatever. EU finals are always in Paris. I think that will actually create a level of familiarity, which actually helps people go to live events with less context or something. I agree.
And even build its own narratives. It's okay, remember guys, if they win this semi-final, Mad Lions get to play in home advantage.
Exactly,
you know what I mean? They get the home crowd, right? But
Yeah.
G2's got a Spanish player as well. So who will they cheer? You know what I mean? Cheer for the Spanish player versus the Spanish team. You know what I mean? It builds natural things. I don't actually care about that. Well, it's not very fair.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You know what I mean?
And you can spread it around with the random road shows.
Imagine we had a Rollcat team, an old Polish team, and it's just with the club, okay, so now because they're the big team, we've now got to have a roadshow over in Poland, so it's fair for them, and then we've got to move everyone over to fucking. It just wouldn't.
No, realistically, it should just be holding the shows where they're in a relevant and successful place.
Yes.
And and that's something which we've talked about a little bit before in terms of it, kind of EU has been stuck in Germany for a long time with the LEC, and Berlin just isn't an esports heavy city. I mean, they've made it into an esports hub, but it's not really an esports city. What you really need is to be holding events in places which already have some kind of esports backing. And to be, London's not a bad place, right? It's a very international city, like I said. I mean, I'd love to be back there. I love London. I lived there for a number of years. But yeah, you do kind of need to be taking the show to places where you do have that kind of interest already. But EU's a little harder to sell that on now that League is not kind of the new hotness in the way that it hugely was between all the way up until COVID, really, it was doing very well in the road shows. You think about the 2018, was it Madrid in 2018 where things went fucking mental? Athens 2019, there were some really big road shows just before COVID, and then LEC got very popular over COVID too because everyone was indoors and people were watching it, but it wasn't seeing it live, and the habit and the tradition of seeing the show live kind of went with it, and we lost a lot of the skills to put on shows. I think one of the issues with some of the last roadshow. I mean, the thing is, last year, I think the roadshows were very well received. I'm actually really surprised that this one didn't sell out more, that it didn't seem to be as well received. Because you think about the Madrid and the Paris roadshows last year, and they were really good. They were really good. And I think even then, even the reception of those was, it doesn't matter if the games don't mean anything. The roadshow makes them mean something. And I'm not sure where that momentum's gone, because I would have thought this would have gone a lot better in terms of ticket sales. I thought that more people would have wanted to get out and see the team. I'm surprised at that, because I thought they were great games. I thought it would be a great event, so I'm quite sad about that.
One thing I did quite like though is that because as you know, as we said ahead of time, you don't know if your team's going to be in the final or not, or whatever. All the Mad Lions fans on the Sunday supporting G2 because obviously they're playing KC, so they just automatically became G2 fans. That was quite funny. You see like a team fight go off and there's like a roar from the crowd, and then the camera pans and it's just loads of people wearing MKOI jerseys. You're like, what? Okay. So yeah, that was pretty funny. As an Arsenal fan, I can wholly relate to this, as the entire footballing world despises Arsenal for whatever reason and cheers every single goal that goes in against them. So, you know, me and Mad Lions Koi fans. Anyway, moving on to the games themselves. Obviously, G2 win in a prevented reverse sweep, despite Hans Sammer's best efforts in Game 5.
I knew you were going to say it. You can't help yourself, can you?
Hey, it is what it is. Hey, you know, lots of players in this series had like ups and downs. This was like a real kind of roller coaster of a series, even though obviously it went, you know, 2-0, then 2-0 the other way, and then whatever. Like, even within wins and losses, this was like kind of crazy. Like, this is like a full spectrum of performances over the course of this series, which is part of what made it really interesting. I don't actually think Caps played amazingly well in a bunch of the games, but obviously people are going to remember how good he was in Game 5 and one or two of the other games. I think people have already forgotten. I was mid-tweet. I was tweeting, right? Skewmond runs the LEC. That was my tweet. I was about to hit send during Game 3 because he was just dumpstering the fuck out of them. It didn't even matter if he had teammates on the Rift or not. He was just solo winning finals on his own. And then by the end of it, everyone was like, yes, it's perfectly reasonable that Caps is the finals MVP. And I'm sat there like, fucking hell, how sure are our memories? Like, holy moly. Like, are we serious? And again, like, even my boy Labrov, did he have a good Game 4? I'm not too sure about that. Did he have an unbelievable Game 5? Yeah, he did. And Busio was like up. I mean, this was a pretty crazy series. And
did you say the word Busu and up? By the way, because there was only one direction his performance was going.
But you know what I thought was funny? What I thought was funny is like I went to the bathroom and I came back and I checked our group chat. And Nymaera had written a bunch of stuff like praising Broken Blade, and literally as I sit down, this guy is just running it absolutely full sprint ahead. Like, holy moly, his Kled was fucking horrendous. So yeah, anyway, crazy series. A whole bunch of, you know, storylines and narratives and all sorts coming out. I guess, Nymaera, what was sort of your overall thoughts, if you can sort of summarize about what
I actually have a pretty easy tagline for the series, which, I mean, I made a tweet about it, and a load of people fucking misunderstood it, because actually the gameplay completely showed it in Game 5 too. G2 are the best early game team in the EU, KC are the best late game team in the EU. And if you think that Game 5 is somehow like a jinx, or it's actually not true. If you don't, the only reason that game went as long as it did is because KC are so fucking good at team fighting, and G2 have a lot of fumbles. And G2 are not good at late game. Yeah, G2 somehow fumbled their way into that Game 5 victory after having pretty much an unlosable game state. They should have been no way that they lost that game after the first 15 minutes, and they damn near found a way to. Most of that series was G2 were the better early game team, and they did get enough of an advantage to close out those games. Then you look at the games which they were losing or lost, and I think that Game 5, you could also throw chuck into the bucket there too. They are not as good at team fighting on even level. And this actually is going to be a worry for me going international, because if they can't team fight effectively, that's a huge issue. So that's probably the biggest thing. KC better late game, G2 better early game. And the only reason why it went so late in Game 5 is because G2 were worse in late game. And I don't necessarily even think that was KC being better at points. I think it was G2 kind of doing it to themselves. But I think logically, the point still stands. KC with a better late game team. And then the other thing was, I think that G2's top side on the whole was better for the series, and KC's bot side was much better on the whole for the series. Because you look at some of the shit which Hans and Labrov are doing, particularly in laning phase and then some of the skirmishes, it gave me a lot of worries. Now, that isn't as hard and true for the series because we saw that Lavrov late game 5 monster performance. So, you know, there are some discrepancies. This is just broad strokes that we're talking about that in particular. I think Kalist was mega in finals. I thought Kalist was mega. He was really he was earning himself a title. He was really trying to there. I was quite surprised that BB held his own as well against. Well, I mean, even in the game 1, that was a little bit. But I'm surprised that BB ended up having so much impact in some of the games. The game 1 and 2, yes, he got solo killed a lot on the Shen versus the Ambessa, but he actually ended up having very good game impact. And then the Yasuo was absurdly good. Great play from him. Glad to see that. It's a champion who's played a bunch over time, particularly in MSI 24 was the one when he played very well on the Yasuo top. That was the top esports and the T1 series that they ended up doing very well in. And then I suppose other broad strokes. Skewmon was just dumpstering KC. I'll completely agree with that. I do think that Yike was maybe a bit hard done by in some of the post-game comments, saying, "Oh, this game was just like game 5's completely thrown by Yike." I don't know what America was meant to do in that game, so
I don't think it was completely thrown by Yike. I think Yike was saved the game like 3 times.
Yeah, I think that people were way too harsh on Yike.
They were.
By the way,
his pathing past Elder was a bit weird though. Like
what?
He could have just.
I can't remember that specific moment actually.
No, wait, what did you say, Rich?
Before G2 got Elder, like the way he pathed out was like a bit weird. Like he was gonna. I think if I remember correctly, he was trying to set up a flank. He successfully like managed to get around, and he was in fog of war. And then G2 just turned to like do the Drake, and he gets killed, like running away basically down the south of the map. And I remember just thinking, there was like
he had to just go into enemy jungle and pray there was no wards.
Yeah, but his path, if I remember correctly, his pathing was like really weird. Like I remember, this is just going off memory, but I remember thinking he could have just got out, or maybe if he just left like a few seconds earlier, he could have just got out.
It's really hard to get out because he's against Keire, who can shoot like a void missile at him to stop the back. So where you can recall from is like a bit short.
But yeah, I mean, anyway.
Anyway,
I'm just explaining it. Like,
I thought it was a very entertaining finals. I'm glad it had a banger game 5 in the way that honestly most game 5s in the modern era haven't. Well, is that true? Game 5s don't always deliver. We'll put it that way. I'm not going to make any big statement about that. I think that Caps is just a fucking goldmine for late game clutch somehow as well. This guy is just so fucking good. He was given a lot of agency in the Game 5 draft, and that was really, really cool to see. Was he better than Skewmon across the series? No, he did have a game-saving Game 5, though, and you have to value that. So both of these can be true. Skewmon was my finals MVP, but I think Caps in that Game 5. I think in some of those late-game scenarios, after everyone else was messing up the team fights, like Hans Sama had... he had a bit of a nightmare, especially in that Game 5. If you had anyone else playing mid lane there from Europe... Not even close. Not even close. I will say, I think Yahoo was actually pretty good on the whole.
Really?
Well, yeah, I mean, across the whole series, yeah, I thought that. Look, it's his first. Okay. No, I'm gonna rephrase that. I still think he was definitely the second best mid laner for sure. There were definitely some moments there. I was just reminded of the fact that this was his first split in EU, and I was actually very impressed with across the entire weekend that he actually held up as well as he did, because I thought this guy would crack like an egg eventually under the pressure, and I thought that is worth taking into context there. And I think that Yahoo. While the Game 5, he did just get a bit blasted. There were a couple of really good one-shots onto Hans Sama, for instance, which completely saved the game in the Game 5.
True. That, like, the one that when they were sieging, like, Nexus turret, like, that's... The thing is, that's like 80% Hans, 20% Yahoo. Like, he doesn't even land everything. Like, he Hans is just...
Aurora things,
like,
baby!
Yeah, just... I don't know. But yeah, Keire, I mean, I want to ask you this as well, Keire. Going in... What actually were your like after you'd watched the Mad Lions KC game? What did you think was going to happen versus what happened?
I thought Carmine Corp would win. I think on a better day they probably should have won. Like I think Carmine Corp's like opening draft is hilariously dog poo. I think their second draft is like comically, like, just tragically terrible. So they've just given away 2 games for free. I think their early game from Bucio in Games 3 and Games 5, like, yes, G2 do have a better early game and have a much better fundamental of map state. And Alistair standing in mid lane and just dying to Anivia has nothing to do with early game understanding. That's just Bucio being bad. And I'm doing it 4 times in a row is not early game understanding. That is just someone being shit, right? So, like, I do agree with Nymaera, like, 100%, and we had the video earlier on exploring the understand. This is why I'm really doubtful of, like, fucking analysts and players. Why the fuck does Kana keep playing Sion and walking away from the lane when he's dying? Is nobody just grabbing his ears and, like, because he makes me want to scream into my mic? Like, what is that all about? Kana's a very good player. He had some of the worst team fighting I've ever seen in my entire life from him. It was fucking shocking. Go watch the Mbessa play. He literally orbits round. He literally has the gold lead. He has the best pick. He solo killed BB. BB has more effect in the game because he ults someone. Because Kana ult gets flashed and then he walks around chickens like that and does nothing with his gold lead. So you literally have like 9,000 gold doing orbits around chicken. Chickens are secured, guys. Just everyone else is dying.
You don't understand it, you know, like the Raptors were in retrograde and there was like a rising Krug.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. No, I think Yike got really hard done by in one-to-one jungle matchups. I think he kind of got sold for bot lane matchups, which I'm fine with. But you see that because when this was paired with Kehu, G2's invasions were unstoppable. Like, G2 could just walk in and take Yike's jungle and there was nothing he could do. Jarvan cannot stand in manfight Aatrox. What do you call it? Nefiri cannot stand in manfight Dr. Mundo. Mundo throws a cleaver, the dogs disappear, and he relatively could just stat checker. But the only natural advantage that Nefiri has is she can kind of itemize into a grievous wound item, but she really doesn't want to.
No, Nefiri's okay versus the Mundo because she has a healing from the Q and Conqueror, so I actually think it's a pretty good matchup. Like you can stop the first cleaver. Yeah, but like it block a cleaver for a dog is actually fine. The first one's fine, and then you can just W the second one, and then he's basically got no cleavers.
No, like the auto attack insta kills all the dogs.
Oh yeah, the auto attack, yeah, sure. But then what you do is you play from range, and then you just but then you can go W for like his cleavers. You basically never get hit by cleavers, and you actually have very good percent HP shred.
That's the best of it. But Kehu like is dying mid lane versus thing, so it's not 1v1, it's 2v1.
Yeah. Of course, that's when it's a problem. Yeah, for sure. But that's a problem in any jungle matchup.
No. But my point is he's now on Nefiri that requires a laner to set up ganks for him because Nefiri doesn't naturally set up her own ganks that well unless you're like using ultimate, and they have no consistent CC. Kana just gets absolutely wilded in this matchup. Game 3, Yikes on the Wukong into Pantheon. It's hilarious. Scumon's literally the best jungler for like three games. And he basically Scumon's solo won 3 games. And then his team massively let him down. Game 4 is the iconic Yike Vi game where he's like terrible for 10 minutes and then the next half of it he's pretty good.
I'll say as well, Scumon damn near carried that game too. There was that like last 1 or 2 team fights mid lane. Scumon was doing. I mean, the problem was his champion just didn't scale well enough, but he was literally getting 110% out of Shinzao. I can't believe he did as much value in those team fights. But like, Caps and Hands were dying for free in team fights. I was really disappointed by G2's carries in the late game team fights. And I think this goes for true across... Well, I mean, Game 5, Caps was much better, of course he was. But in Game 4, I sat there looking at Hands and Caps and being like, guys, I mean, I get that they have a Vira Calm, which can get to you, but you're making their jobs pretty easy. And that was a real worrying moment.
Yike in this final for me was really kind of just like Scumon plus X, and it was basically Yike and Kalist. Kalist's biggest mistake was not flashing Aatrox with Oriball going towards him.
In like game 2 or whatever it was, or game 1.
When he's on Lucian, Scumon just flashed on top of him with Oriball on him and insta kills him.
Yeah, the problem with that is it reminds me of the world's Flash Mundo's Shockwave, where you have a big champion with a bunch of particle effects, and it's really quite easy to miss that Shockwave animation. Obviously, Scumon is pretty good with that. Yeah, but I'm like that. It's just a caveat onto that because I'm pretty sure in that fight, didn't he walk forwards to try and get onto Caitlyn, but the Ambassador ult didn't hit her, so he takes a full headshot that has to dash backwards, and then he doesn't even have dash out of it, so he's pretty screwed anyway. I'm pretty sure.
He should just preemptively flash though, no? Like
the issue is like you would never ever want an Aatrox at that range, like ever. You know what I mean at all, and he just like dives to it. I'm not saying he can carry it, but I'm saying that's his biggest mistake. So that tells you how well he played. You know what I mean? That's in a full 5 game series. I think that's his like biggest mistake. In game 2, bot lane literally gets sold by the worst topside setup I've ever seen in my entire life, where it literally Kehu, Yike, and Kana literally send the whole game trying to make plays to the abyss by trying to like if they literally just farmed their creeps and literally made no play. The same in game 2 and 5. If KC just made no play, there would have been further goal up. The goal get delta would have been. The amount of plays they initiated and lost on were incredible. When Kehu like teleports top to try and link him with Kana, and they both die because Skewmon just like is sitting south because they've not actually checked where he is on the map. You don't need to do that. Kehu just does that because they're assuming they're taking a risk. You don't need to take a risk. You're on Rise. You've got all the time in the world. You can literally just sit back, get your sun lounger out, pina colada, you're looking at your watch, you're like, oh, my tears just like getting ready. Like, you're not in a rush to do anything. But they're like looking for, I get this feeling that KC are really bad at evaluating how far behind or how far ahead they are at any given time in the game. Because the plays...
Yeah, but that's why it works out well late game. When everyone is already online, it doesn't matter. But they're not great at assessing when people are online, especially if they're early game fights.
No, exactly. Like game 3, like G2's early game is like comical in terms of like they have like a 6,000 gold lead, and that game and game 5 really highlight like the comeback of like KC like late game and like the speciality of it. But I think that this was very very like very very close series. One thing, overarching thing, and it was something Thorn tweeted out, which is quite interesting to unpack. He was talking about like the whole G2 for Skewmond over Yike. It's like, the people that said that, like, Yike for Skewmond, the move, like, would be, like, worse off and stuff like that. The thing is, like, it did turn out also to be true. You have just created another domestic rival by giving someone to Yike. The next best team that can take titles off you, and has taken a title off you, has Yike. They've just taken the team that has remained the same to game 5 with a Korean mid laner who's just playing for the first time, a bot lane that's just playing for the first time, and they took
should they have kept Yike because now they've given a powerful player to someone else?
KC can get a Skewmon, and then they've got the better jungler.
No. I agree with the move. What I'm saying is like what it turned out is like there was no like correct decision. I think G2 should have gotten Skewmon, right? What I'm saying is like, by doing that, you then created a team that can actually domestically rival. Yeah, there was no win-win there. So put it this way, on the context of like this final, right? Okay. I don't think like Yike was like the MVP or anything like that, right? But there's a reason that it's like the game's at this like the point it's in, because I think Kana had a fucking mare, and I think Busio had pretty much a mare. I don't think Kehu was like all that good. I think if you go look at all,
I think Busio in lane was good, and then outside of that, yeah. So I think that bot lane laning phase actually kept KC in the games a lot more.
They did execute a lot on that. But like if you go look at all the actual big massive comeback plays and where they're like triggered from, like the top lane play in game 5 where they kill up caps, right? Yike on Maokai. Like Yike on Maokai like killing top lane. The Vi like engages. The Wukong like ults to then flash and clip the target. Yeah, Kana has that really sick gnarl, which was like, you know what I mean, the bit in the game that makes you think, oh, like Kana was like, but Kana's team fighting was pretty dodgy, like all game round. That was probably like his big magnum opus moment.
Also, not to crap on Kana or whatever, because obviously it's a good play, but that gnarl is like so weird. It's like, what is G2
the one in game
doing?
3 or game 4?
It's all wandered down. Like they see him, they literally see him, and they just wander
into him.
He throws
a boomerang.
It's so weird. Like, it's actually so weird. It looked like wind.
You mean the one in top jungle where he gets everyone, pretty much?
The one underneath Baron Pit where they're pathing towards blue, and then Gnar is waiting in the bush, like, below blue buff, and just...
Yeah, well, no, that was after a fight in which, like, he'd literally retreated that way. They had full information, and I'm pretty sure in that play, both carries both had flash too. So it's like... Yeah, G2 had full information. Look, this is why, in the moment, and you don't want to shit on a big play, because it's cool to celebrate hype moments, and it is actually completely fine to just enjoy hype. That's completely fine. Enjoy League of Legends. That's what we're here for. But when you dissect things like that, as you're saying, you know, with the Aurora kind of saving the game, and actually was kind of Han's mistake, you do have to factor in the enemy team part of it too, which is why actually a lot of the time, the more you watch League, the less excited you get, because the less you get to see that's actually new, because actually does it feel like just someone's made a mistake rather than someone's made a big play. That one there was a G2 mistake, doesn't make it less hype because of the stakes for it, but realistically, I'm pretty sure
I
that even
mean,
G2 had like
most
both carry flashes up, right?
yeah, I mean it's really really bad from G2, but at the same time, you know, most awesome plays require enemy team to fuck up something because otherwise it would just mean that the character they're using is so OP that they're able to just impose their will and there's nothing you can do. Like there's no counterplay option, right? Like you do usually require some misplay to get an awesome play, but that
like,
one was really bad.
It's like what I always say though is it's a degree. Like
Yeah.
there's different degrees. It's like, you know what I mean, you know, like the faker the one we all talking about, the faker shuffle at worlds. It's entirely normal for ruler doesn't flash that. It's hard to flash, right? The way they sell it, it makes entirely sense. One of the best plays like of all time. The Z 1v1 outplay with Faker versus Ryu. It's entirely natural that Ryu just doesn't hit that because it's movement. It's just sometimes you just don't hit it, alright? The Gnar, oh, here guys, the Gnar's here. You can see the Gnar bar. Throws the boomerang out. By the way, guys, the Gnar is in the
here
booth.
Comes the Gnar. Here comes the Gnar.
That was so weird because you could just see it happening in slow motion, but like it's not actually going to happen though because that would be mental. And then it does happen, and you're like, all right, okay. By the way, I was like joking earlier, but I think they actually did give Finals MVP to Caps.
They did, yes.
That's insane, by the way. Like that is actually insane. And this
what it is it's the Game 5 MVP. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's not actually. I actually don't think that's a full series.
We should have
one.
gone
For
to
me, that
Lavrov
comes
if that's the case.
well, I mean, Caps was really fucking good. But
No, he was.
It's
Caps
not.
was
It's
incredible.
He was. No, he was.
awesome.
But okay, putting on, fully embracing my bias though. Was Caps actually better than Lavrov in that game?
Yes, in Game 5 he was
Yeah,
better
he
than Lavrov,
was.
yeah.
Really?
He literally killed Keire, I predicted like Crystal, to save 2 people so there's not enough people to take the objective that stops the entire map from the KC flip. If that stun doesn't land, KC win the entire fight.
Yeah, that Nico though, am I right? Anyway, that is mental. that is actually mental that they gave it to Caps.
Skumond's the
Like,
most robbed by
seriously.
me. Skumond is fucking robbed. This is like one of the most solidified. There's 2 options. There's Kalist if you believe in some sort of like fucked up can be the overarching MVP, and he probably made the least amount of like big mistakes, right? But Skumond's just the outright like MVP.
It's so clear. But this is the thing. It's like this is why I said like I genuinely don't care about EU doing like MVP or All Pro or whatever because it's like meaningless to me anyway. Like if you're actually going to give that to Caps instead of Skumon, tell me that if the nameplates aren't reversed that it doesn't go to fucking Skumon. Tell me because it definitely does. If Caps for whatever weird funky reason have been playing jungle because he is EU's golden child. By the way, a title well earned. Don't get me wrong. But you can't just give people fucking awards on name value. And that is what that is. Let's be real. Yes, obviously it's weighted as well because it's fresh in the mind. It's Game 5. But Skumon, like, again, random numbers. But if Caps had an 8 out of 10, like, performance on the day, Skumon was a 10. Or very close to. Like, it's not even like one's just slightly ahead of the other. Skumon was unbelievable for most of the
I think maybe knock off a point for some of the late game Skarner fights, where I think that he didn't block Markyle very effectively. Like that, there are some blemishes there, but they are, in the grand scheme of things, tiny. And actually, I think this is a great conversation to have now. Last year, remember, GT were really good going up to the finals, particularly maybe not in regular season. They had a couple of knocks there, but then when they got into playoffs, they were pretty on for most of it. And then Skumon and Lavrov choked in pretty much both the finals in the first part of the year, and then it was summer where things started to come. Yeah, no, remember we were talking about Skumon and Lavrov being really bad in finals specifically. That was the winter one particularly.
It was Lavrov that was really bad in winter, but not Skumon.
I thought Skumon was, and then Skumon was bad at MSI as well. Because now, don't get me wrong, I think that in spring it was solo laners. I remember there were caveats for Skumon because actually BB was losing lane at MSI and then in the finals as well, and it felt like Skumon had to bail him out. But I remember at least the narrative was, and it was acceptable at the time, that Skumon and Lavrov weren't good in finals. And I was talking to people at the team themselves who were worried that Skumon and Lavrov were feeling the pressure too much in finals and MSI, and it was causing a lowering in their performance, which I think it was pretty obvious to see from the outside going in, particularly Lavrov, but I think it applied to Skumon.
That's a beautiful get out of jail free card if you're BB at MSI, by the way. Oh,
BB was fucking awful.
My jungler and support, I can't play the game now.
Yeah, BB was fucking awful.
I I just refreshed my memory. Winter's final is definitely like Skeemon's the only person doing reasonably well in like all the games in like G2. Labrov's just having like the mayor of like all mailers.
Yeah, but I think either way, I think that the performance of G2 in finals last year was not up to snuff. I do think that Skewmond has just continued to be fucking great. And I think that for him to perform this well in a finals, when I do seem to remember there were comments about him in finals from last year, he looked fucking great. And I think that Labrov had some awkward games. Like the Renata game I didn't like from at all. I think the Renata game was really bad from him. But you look at that late game 5. Do you think Labrov would have pulled out that game 5 last year? No, I don't think so. And that is important to track still. It's worrying that G2 let that series go to 5. It is, but there are at least some points of growth that we can see from them.
Well, this is what I want to talk about now, because we'll get into sort of the obituaries of the other teams and why they fell shortly. But I do want to address, obviously, G2 will be representing Europe at First Stand. And Keire, obviously, you mentioned a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, I can't remember. But basically, whoever makes it, you know, I'm just paraphrasing, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But whoever basically makes it to First Stand from Europe might be a bit cooked because of the sort of regional strength differences or whatever. Going into First Stand now, do you still feel that way? Do you think has anything changed in your mind? Or
BNX, because BNX is there, like you could flip. Like I think they're good, but I don't think. I think if T1 had made it, I think you'd have been cooked. I think even Thingy would have cooked as well. But they've proven that they were the BFX prove they were like what they are. I just don't think they've got the same like. Not I don't use the word aura, but I don't think people are as fearful of them because of like the name values of the team, and probably people will play a more open game versus them. I think G2 stylistically, particularly because Raptor versus Skewmond is actually not favoured, but like you can find angles into.
I think Raptor's been playing really well, so it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, no, but I mean in terms of stylistic, in terms of like Raptor really likes to play onto his like lanes, and like Skewmond's actually like more like selfish in terms of like his own playing like his lane's playing like for him and to do things for him, so that could be really interesting. I'm super scared for fucking Hansama versus Daibo. Like Daibo, put it this way, Daibo is just an ADC. They're like, and that's why he can't beat like a team like Gen G or really do anything to Gen G. But he's really fucking good, and he can put you in an absolute world of hurt. And him and Kellen have got some tasty laning. But I think G2 could upset them. I'm not saying that they're favoured. But like Gen G is just such a fucking another planet in my opinion of thing, and I think if BLG goes, that's like just hell on earth for G2. If BLG end up at this tournament,
I think G2 may have the second worst bot lane at the event. It might get down to that. They're definitely because they're going to be worse than every Korean and Chinese bot lane. The bot lanes which they're sending, regardless of who actually makes it, are very, very good in laning phase. I think that Team Secret Wells and Eddie and B could actually upset them. I think they're a really fucking good bot laning team. Like they've been good for a while, actually, both those players. CBLOL I don't know enough about, which is why I'm leaving it.
Berserker and Isles are fucking.
But I thought they were really good going in towards finals. I thought that they leveled up a lot, and I think Berserker's really, really good. I don't believe.
Berserker's good, but Isles, mate.
Yeah, sure, but I don't believe in Hans and Labrov's laning phase. I just don't believe in it right now. And I think that I genuinely, there's a little bit of hyperbole, but I genuinely think they could have second worst bot lane at the event because I don't know enough about CBLOL.
I'll quantify it safely. They're bottom half, which is scary. That's the time they're bottom half, and it's not a good bottom half. That's the other thing, you know. Like, G2 at this event though, Rich, is like for me, and it's been like my criticism of them. They're worse than they were. They are worse than the team they were at Worlds, right? But put it into perspective, I think Gen G are better than they were in summer. So you know what I mean? Think about that. Gen G are better than they were in summer. Now obviously they went to Worlds and had a mayor, right? But they're better than they were in summer. G2 aren't better than their summer version. They're worse. This is probably like the third worst version of this team. So it's like they're not Worlds, summer.
Well, MSI was the worst, right?
So like Worlds and summer was their best form. So like they're like still like 2 or 3 tiers below where they need to be. I don't know. Like for me, there's just so many questions. I think Hans not being at the level. It's that joke again, Rich. Can all 5 players not just be good for any fucking period of time? By the way, like Gen G, all 5 players are just good all the time. we laugh at BLG, but like all 5 players are like decent. Ben's not the big giga Ben, but like, you know what I mean? They're good enough. You know, it's
I
frustrating.
think that even though Skewmond and Caps are really, really good, I think that Shin and Knight are really, really strong. I mean, there's a world in which they don't make it, by the way. I mean, it depends which teams make it from LPL. There's actually a real world where JDG, because they have a really good matchup over BLG, maybe one of AL or BLG don't go. And then maybe because JDG are not a very good early game team, they're good at laning, but they're not good at planning early games. There's a chance you could out prep them. But they've got Tabe, so again, JDG are a weird team. That's like the one Asian team I think I think just get brutalized by AL and BLG. I think they just get brutalized by them.
Yeah, do you think what specifically, let's be realists here and not say like, well, if Hans Summer turns into Prime Ruler, like what specific gaps do you think G2 has, Nymaera, that could in theory be somewhat closed before the event?
They need to really and I mean really drill their bot lane CVT matchups. They really need to drill that. That needs to be sorted. I think that I think that they've managed to pull together some decent drafts. I will say this was an interesting thing across LEC playoffs weekend in general. On the whole, I think the teams with the better draft did end up winning. On the whole, I think there was maybe one discrepancy in. Well, obviously, I think the game where GT got really far ahead. I think that one in the JIT game 3 that was really worrying for them. I think the other one was the RE game from MKOI where Jojo. By the way, Jojo, the very disappointing weekend from him. Like I was very disappointed from him versus KC. But the RE game where realistically, if Jojo builds better, they probably win that game. Those like the only 2 times I thought, well, the better draft lost. I think maybe. So I think that G2 their drafting has gotten a lot better. I'm glad that BB has the right matchups. You're asking about what holes can be fixed though. Fixing late game team fighting is not an easy thing to do. And I think BLG have had this issue too. BLG are not a good late game team fighting team. They're not a good late team fighting team in general right now, which is very sad for them. It really just has to be about drilling matchups. I mean, there's no other way to put it. They need to drill matchups better because if bot lane actually has a strong platform, then we get to see actually like peak G2 early game. I'd really love to see G2 versus BLG, by the way, because they're actually both very good early snowball teams with specific strengths to them, but neither of them are great late game team fighters, so they actually have like an analog there. You can kind of check between them. I don't know what GT can do in the short term, though, to fix what I think are quite complex issues.
I think it'd be some Attila the Hun shit. Like,
what the hell does that mean?
like the Scourge of God, mate. Fucking like chop him off the statue and taking the fucking sword and calling it like the Sword of Mars, mate. Like, I mean, I think that is some bro. Like the Form Knight Viper on and like Junarin, mate. Like because the strength. This is the problem with like G2. G2 used to be, and like this is weird, a bit weird. They weren't a better like versus like a theoretical field. They were a healthier team with Yike on it because they could switch between bot lane domination, Yike like carry jungle games, and then they could switch Yike over to the Zinjal and Maokai's, and then they would kind of play like front to back standard team fight, and you know Caps gets like a good angle, right? And then BB would have like a couple of silver bullets. G2, the best team version of it is it's just Qmond. It literally is just Qmond. It's just Qmond. Like big Caps games, what are they? Like it's like okay, we got the Anivia game, and Caps is on like the
regular season. We had more.
Yeah, but Caps is on the S plus tier pick. That game doesn't look as good as the best Qmon game. The game that G2 has to play at first stand has to evolve around Skewmon. But there's no problem with that, but the games are BO5s. You've got to do it 5 times, or 3 times, right? That's fucking hard, mate. That's really, really, really hard. It's one of the hardest jungles. Mate, even the people like Canyon can't do it in Fearless. Like, even Canyon ends up on, like, supportive picks, like, all the time. Yes, he's got more flexibility and reasons to do so, but it's just really, really difficult. I'm not saying that, like, Fearless hurts them. What I'm saying is like, the best version of G2 is a version in which you have a very proactive, a very enabled Skewmond, and he's able to like get these like key advantages. Like, I don't think this. It could happen, but I don't think Caps is going to be, and sound clip this because it's going to happen now. It's going to be solo killing fucking Knight twice in mid lane, and then double invading like June to create like a 3,000 gold lead at like 13 minutes. I don't think that's going to be happening. or like Rise, what's it called, Talia. I just don't think that's that replicable.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel a bit ominous at the moment going into first stand, but at the same time, you could make the argument that hey, if G2 hadn't messed up that lead in game three, we'd all be sat here being, hang on, G2 just went through the whole of players without dropping a single game, and you'd be like, fucking hell, like
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. That's why you should. Yeah.
yeah, like yeah, they looked like trash in regular season, just getting into playoffs to get into playoffs. And then hey, look, this is a real G2, and maybe they've got more to show, or whatever. But those games did happen, and we did get to see all the warts and freckles. So yeah, we will see. Anyway, we should briefly talk about the other teams that fell by the wayside and why they fell by the wayside. And let's start with their opponent before we talk about MKOI. KC obviously were on the other side of the rift. Why, Nymaera, ultimately did KC fall short? I mean, again, just to frame it, after regular season, we talked about it, G2 just barely scraping in. If things had gone slightly differently on the last day, they wouldn't even have been in playoffs. KC, we all agreed, looked like the best team. They probably overall in regular season had the best drafts. So why ultimately have they come up just a little bit short?
I think that in finals itself, I think that Kana struggled to just be out and out best top laner, which is a shame for him because typically if you give him any matchup in this split, he just brutalizes people, and that was not as much of a factor. I think that Broken Blade stepped up a fair amount. I think it's quite telling that you looked at something like the Ambessa game, and they couldn't make the Ambessa Galio work to the level which you'd expect them to. So that was a big factor. I think a lot of it does lie on Kanner individually. Not that I think he was like, I don't think I'm as negative as Keire was on Kanner's team fighting, but it's definitely not as good as you expect from him. It was pretty fucking bad, right? And I think that KC probably should have allowed him counterpick more. When you looked at him in the Rumble matchup into the Ornn when it was a better matchup, that felt a lot better for him. Just give him more counterpicks. I think that we've noticed this a lot over G2's careers that they do give BB just a ton of counterpicks. Why isn't KC trying to just deny that and say, nope, no BB silver butts, you don't get to do that? So that was one big thing. And then I think KC struggled to slow games down until everyone was in a position to fight. I think that's probably the biggest thing against G2, is G2 could just accelerate pretty much uncontested. I don't think KC were very good at slowing down games, and there are ways to do that where effectively you're kind of like matching support roams on the map, matching jungle plays, so it's not just a split map, and actually you end up just diffusing plays rather than making big plays happen all the time. Because the amount of plays that Skewmond and Labrov could make pretty much uncontested was way too high, I think, in this series. I think if Yike and Busio, and I think this is particularly is on the head of Busio actually, if they were better at kind of getting information on enemy jungle support, just matching, not necessarily committing to the play, but playing reactive, it would have allowed them to get into the point where they could just slowly scale into the game, get everyone online, and play for the huge fights. Because I think that Kalist was mega in finals. I think Kalist was the best AD carry across playoffs. I think this guy was fucking great. And I think that if you just play around him with a strong front line, strong front to back, I think KC could have and maybe should have won this finals. Like I said, I think that G2 got away with not actually being a very good team fighting team at points and not actually being a very good late game team because KC fell to such big disadvantages because the game's accelerated out of hands for them. And a lot of that is credit to Skewmon, right? Skewmon is so good at finding openings on the map. But I think that KC were not good enough at slowing down the game against G2. I can't discredit them too heavily for that, though, because G2 are very good at that. I suppose the player which I expected more from... Yeah, I mean, there's Kanner in the individual level, but I think also Busio struggled to get into a point where he was safely being able to be on the map and make plays on playmaking champions, which is why I think... I was going to say I thought he would be better on the Enchanters, but that's actually not true in terms of the results. He was actually... They won the games where he was on more proactive playmakers, I suppose. And he struggled to like, efficiently use playmaking, I think, in the games where they were struggling.
Yeah, Keire, you mentioned just before that you felt that KC would probably win ahead of finals. Why do you think that wasn't the case? Where do you think they fell short?
The three, the drafts really poor. 2 opening drafts. I hate Jarvan, mate. Like, Jarvan's my new fucking bugbear, mate. Like,
He's so fucking good though in so many drafts.
Nah, he's fucking dog shit, mate. Like, I could honestly.
Can I
Okay,
just
okay, I'll
say,
tell you when
was
he's
the
good.
original J4 questioner, and
No,
now
no, no.
it's coming full
No.
circle.
Jarvan is a good pick, but he's like a A tier, F tier like counter pick, right? If you're not actually countering anything with the Jarvan, you have a Jarvan.
It depends. If you have a good combo with the Jarvan, it's fucking great, regardless, I think. I mean, even when you're into stuff like Azir, Corki, if you have Jarvan Orianna, he doesn't care. So that's fantastic. I think the times when he's bad are when he's against mobile backliners or heavy tanks, and you don't have a great combo to pair him with. Luckily, you get most of them. I think the thing which is making him really good, and I'll agree with you in part here, because I don't think Jarvan is as good. He shouldn't be as good as he is. He is good because people are infatuated with zero frontline compositions across the world right now. We saw this from Anyone's Legend versus Invictus Gaming. We saw that in game 2 of their series, where AL drops a crazy loss because they had zero frontline. We saw this in KC MKOI when Yoya had the Jarvan game versus, again, like, I think that was the Varus top game from Canna, which, again, was just zero frontline. Or they had a Sejuani, but it doesn't matter because you've got such a squishy team, it just doesn't work. We've seen this a whole bunch of times. If you're picking zero frontline compositions, Jarvan just shits on you. There's nothing you can do against a good Jarvan engage when you have zero tanks, or like too many squishy backliners or a mobile backliners. That's why I think Jarvan is good right now, because people love to play a mobile carries with no ability to survive a cataclysm.
So, here's my problem. Shen isn't that good. He's alright. He's maybe like B tier. Mid. If you think Jarvan is this like S tier like pick, why is my entire like Jarvan combo just being invalidated by another alt button? And then they've also got a bard who can self alt me and the person I go on to. And then like I actually can't stand and fight the other jungler because if I do, he batters my fucking skull in. Like literally just like if Aatrox just stands on top with Jarvan, Aatrox, I'm pretty sure Aatrox just wins almost every time.
Yeah, but Aatrox is an anathema to that. Yeah, Aatrox destroys Jarvan.
But I'm pretty sure they see the Aatrox and you pick the Jarvan.
Yeah, at that point, why are you doing that? Yeah, for sure. At that point, it's just bad drafting. But yeah.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying. This is game 1. This is your best draft. This is KC. You've got all the champions of the game, and this is your best draft. All your prep. This is what you come out with. I'm just like, ooh, that's a sore one. And that's why I get like disappointed. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like KC's drafting was better than that, right? I think Canna was a little bit poorer in team fighting than I expected. Generally, I think Busio had key mid games was really poor, and I think Busio's link up play, it was never good with Yike. But I think it began to get that weakness became more apparent because some lanes were lost, like mid lane and at times top lane, and so the ability for like Busio to link him with Yike was like poorer. I don't really know how you like fix. I don't know how you take the bot lane advantage and you save jungle. I think that's very, very hard to do in League of Legends right now. So I'm not that like critical on it. The thing is, Rich, I'm also not that forgiving in the sense of like I think this could have also just been a 3-0 and it not even need to be all that that close. I think the first 3 games, like G2 looked really, really sharp. I think it took some like not miracles, but it took some like big errors from like G2. But I've been seeing those errors like all year. You know what I mean? That's why I'm less forgiving of them. BO1 data is always hard. And I always thought like the thing was is like I always thought like KC could have like bad early games and then like what Nymaera say, you get to the mid game and the late game and you'd outmuscle them. And I think that was illustrated a bunch of times. But I don't think their drafts like reflected that strength. You know what I mean? It's like look at these drafts. It's like, okay, where's the Khalif Jenks draft, the Aphelios draft? Like, where's the Varus draft for me? Where's the even at like points of like, I know it's not something he plays like a ton of, but like looking over at the strengths of like the Corki, I think that the Corky was Corky like completely unpicked in finals, Nymaera? Am I remembering?
I don't have the
Oh no,
scoreboards up and
Hans Sama played it in game 3,
game
sorry.
3.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty deep into the series, for Corky and the strengths of it and what both teams want to do. So a little bit of like weird stuff there. But at the end of the day, Rich, is I'm not that like thingy. This isn't some like JDG at like Worlds 2023 where it's some high collapse. I think this is an entirely likely outcome. And I think G2 came in more prepped. They were better rewarded. I think that's reflected in the games. I think they had the best player on the server by a margin that is not inconsiderable. And I think that we are, because it's based on the data, we are sending the best team to first stand. So
Yeah.
I'm not that sympathetic. I just thought like in terms of like time moving forward, things would change. But
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's particularly surprised, even though they came in as technically the 7th seed or whatever. I don't think anyone's that shocked that, G2 somewhat got themselves to an okay level to be able to contest at least and ultimately win, obviously. As I said, the only sad thing for me is, like, I think we'd all be going into first hand with maybe a chunk more optimism if they had actually just cleanly closed out game 3. I think we'd be like, fucking hell. Like, you'd almost feel like you didn't know how good G2 were, right? Because regular season is just complete fake news. Like, haven't learned anything. There's just nothing there. And then they win every single game in playoffs, and you're like, this team could be anything. They could be not that great, or they could be awesome, or like, who knows? And you'd actually be really excited to see what they'll do against the Eastern teams. I'm not saying I'm not. Like, I still want to see a whole bunch of those matchups. As you said, I think BLG would be fun. I think any of the Korean matchups would be fun. But yeah, it is kind of sad in a way, even though we got a banger domestic final. It's slightly soured my hopes and dreams in terms of first stand, so it is what it is. But anyway, let's just touch on, before we get to a few award dishing outs here, on MKOI, who are obviously the other team from the weekend, the home favourites, as it were. And they had their own best of 5 banger. Not as much of a banger, because I felt like that game was kind of like, those games were a bit weird. Like, it just felt like gifts, some of those games to a certain extent. Whereas, like game 5, obviously we talked about the juxtaposition of like G2's early game versus like the resistance that KC gave them in the late game, which caused these crazy epic moments or whatever. It did feel a bit more like quicksandish, I guess, in this KOI KC series. Like, I don't know. To me, it was maybe it's just because game 5 was so good in that series. I'm now just reverse being unfair, let's say, about this series. But yeah, Nymaera, what was your thoughts on KC in general? Do you think they? I don't know. Like, to me, I guess this is actually my main point on this. I never felt at any point like MKOI were that good. That's actually my main point.
Yeah. I think I was waiting for MKOI to wake up in a way that they didn't really. And I think particularly...
See, by the way, very quickly, I was the opposite. I was just kind of waiting for them to lose. Because I felt that every time they won a game, right, I was never really convinced by them at all.
Sure, but when I looked at them at their best last year... I thought they could reach that. Yeah, but I thought they could reach that again because I thought that the formula would work well for them. I think that particularly with the way that jungle support is right now, I think it is best to play very proactive jungle support play. I would have thought that Elyoya and Alvaro would have found their way to that because that's how they were winning a lot of last year. Very quick, decisive jungle support moves. And I think that Elyoya was fucking great. I thought Elyoya was fantastic. I thought that across the entire split, Elyoya is the guy with the least blame on him. I think that a lot of this series against KC was kind of Elyoya versus Yike. I was saying this before, though. I think that realistically, the series for MKOI KC basically played out as I thought draft did. I thought that I looked at the drafts and I thought, well, game 1 was a triple squishy backline comp into a Jarvan and Bessa. You're probably losing, and that's what happened, particularly when you have like Orianna and the Varus. I mean, you can't survive the Jarvan dunking you all the time. That's basically what happened. Eventually, MKOI just kind of found the dunk. Game 2 was, well, MKOI ended up picking a very low backline access team into a front-to-back with a Sion Ashe Seraphine. So if you don't manage to get to the backline, you lose that game. That's basically what happened. They couldn't reach the Ashe Seraphine. Things went very badly wrong. Yeah, who had a very good Rise game. But realistically, it was a front-to-back where MKOI couldn't win the front-to-back, and they didn't have enough backline access to kind of deny that. Game 3, basically full squishy comp besides the Sejuani into Kiana Kaiser, which just explode you at the drop of a hat. So, and eventually that's what happened there too. Game 4 is the one where I thought that MKOI should have been way more competitive, and they weren't because JoJo went for this Rod of Ages Crypt Bloom build, which is just throwing that game away because the Ahri had 0 DPS. You know, I've had my rants about Ahri itemization here before. I think that at the points where JoJo decided to go Catalyst, it was after he already got Ionian Boots, and he was actually 10 CS up in lane, which is a bit overperformance versus Victor. Victor is meant to be 10 CS up on you. JoJo did well in that early lane. He ends up buying the Catalyst, and he ends up losing damage, which means that he can't play the game. I think at worst, defensively, you can go like Malignants and then Seekers, and then try and play around that. But he ended up not having ult cooldown at the right points. He didn't have the damage to finish off a bunch of fights, and it left it being an Aphelios-only carry comp. And it really didn't help that Mirwin's Poppy pick into the Gnar just did not work. Mirwin was, I think, the most hard diff person on the Rift. I think that he was really poor. And that's a problem when Kana gets to just style on you shit like the Akali. And of course, the Gnar, you just kind of know he'll always do that. But like the Akali, that was a kind of a classic for him. So I think MKOI, the one game I can really criticize in terms of that was that game 4 in terms of the draft on that level, because I think that JoJo built wrong and it legitimately lost them a game, I think. I mean, there was a chance they would have lost it anyway. Of course, there always is, but I think that his low damage build going Rod of Ages into Crypt Bloom, the reason he did that is because sometimes you get a bit spooked with Vi plus Mage combos because they burst you out very quickly, and the Victor can outtrade you pretty heavily anyway. And then the Crypt Bloom was a response to seeing 3 Merc Treads. But at that point, you should have just gone for higher damage build off your first item and go for the Malignance and give yourself a more acceleration chance, really. So that was poor. But yeah, I think MKOI, I don't think Alvaro played very well this entire split. I expected to see more from him. Super, at least we saw flashes of that upper level. I don't really think we saw that from Alvaro the entire split, to the point where I'm like, well, who were our top supports this split? I think Busio was there for most of it. I think Labrov's there. And then I think you've got Jun and Alvaro quite distantly behind, I think. Can you think of anyone else who's really up there from EU? Those are the ones which I think of in terms of
Alvaro. I wouldn't even mention Alvaro, honestly, other than to say he's been really disappointing. I think it's not that he's not had some good games, but I think Alvaro's actually been poor compared to his best from last year.
Hugely so. And I that was one of the people I wanted to see wake up. I think one of the other people I wanted to see wake up was JoJo, and I don't think JoJo was just very, very silent, like I said. I mean, the Ahri game was somewhat negative. The Yone game was a bit of a disaster, but then again, the game 5 in general was a bit of a disaster. You know, very good Kha'Zix pick. And I think that the 2 players who shined the most for me were the 2 junglers. I think that matchup was the most fun, and of course, Kana had a great time. But yeah, MKOI, I think that there were a couple of drafts in there, like I was saying, which were kind of like that was what cost them, really, the drafts. And then yeah, I think a couple of players we didn't see their peak the entire split, which is really sucky to see, because we know they have a high ceiling. We've seen them, you know, all together like hit pretty decent highs before, and we just didn't see that.
Wasn't it, I could be getting this wrong, wasn't it Merwin who was a bit upset that he wasn't offered a contract extension? He was told, you need to prove it or something, and he's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and do that then. Wasn't that Merwin?
Well, Muin said basically, like, I'm going to prove to them that I deserve that contract extension, which I think is a correct attitude to have. But it was
it's not going very well, though, is it? Fucking
yeah,
hell, it's not going well.
Him and Super, I think, weren't offered it initially, so they're the ones who are kind of playing for their jobs.
Yeah, start house hunting outside of Berlin, I guess. Merwin. Hopefully,
wow,
hopefully he has a much better rest of the year, because it's been rough. And that has, to be fair, been a theme of a bunch, as you mentioned, these MKOI players. I think JoJo, while having a very poor first half of 2025, had an excellent ramp up in the second half of the year. Alvaro, similarly, did have some weird, was it summer playoffs? He sort of fell off a little bit. But Alvaro, generally speaking, was very good last year. And Merwin wasn't amazing last year, but he definitely had some high highs, and
yeah, at least he had the crazy picks, yeah, which helped him a lot.
But yeah, he's kind of defaulted back to sort of being a relatively conventional top laner and not a particularly good one, which is a bit of an issue. So hopefully he regains some of that identity in the rest of the year. But yeah,
Merwin was very standard last year, by the way. Like,
yeah, he was. He didn't really go.
He was still playing like Nidalee top and shit though. Like, he still had Varus top as well. He played Varus top last year, a couple of games.
Yeah, I played like 3 games of Ars top, a game of Vex top.
He had some picks. He played. I think.
2 games in Italy.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. You know, it's going to be different, obviously, than when he was on Bisons in LVP or whatever. Like, you're not going to be
No, no,
able
no.
to.
Remember, this is his 3rd year in the league.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And 2014 was when 2014 to 2015 was the real transition for me for Merwin, where he like went from being like
2024.
really, yeah, 2024, where he went from being like really silver bullets player that needed them, and then in 2025 he was way more well-rounded, and they probably won the split partially off the strength of his ability to just laying out conventionally. You know what I mean? Like play the Cassante into the Mundo, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. I think he's had a real mare and he's really bottlenecked this team. In a lot of ways, him and Alvaro, unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel like with MKOI, they've almost sort of opened the door to a team like a Vitality or someone who should be able to just make a few tweaks and actually contest for that top 3 spot. Because even though, as we all said, of course, before the start of this split, that they were our top 3 teams, of course. But given how disappointing you'd have to say, despite, you know, taking Casey's 5 games, MKOI overall have been fairly disappointing. But they're still comfortably the 3rd best team because we don't actually have quite the strength and depth that I think we had last year, for example. Certainly early where we did have...
We do have it in certain roles. This actually might be worth a conversation, guys. I actually think that as a top 3 set of junglers, it may be the best like international cohort we've maybe ever had. I mean, do you think we really sing the praises of Skewmon? We really like Yike, and Yoya's really fucking good too. I mean, there have been points where Jankos was actually legitimately best jungler in the world. I think there were some points across like 2019 and maybe some points before where Jankos was literally vying for best in the world, which is insanity to say because it just so rarely happens with any role in the West nowadays. But I think as a top 3, well, I don't think any of those junglers are best in the world. I could actually trust...
2015 was pretty incredible.
Oh, that's true. We did have like,
amazing,
and
amazing Rainover, and it's not be Lulex though, not in Yankos. Actually, scrap that. Fuck that. What the hell? Jesus.
Yeah, Yankos was there and pretty good.
Yeah,
No,
but I'm like,
2015.
okay, so maybe hard to say it definitively, but I do think that jungle in EU is probably our best role right now. If it's at the very top end, I think it is. I think that, you know,
imagine if
given
Razork
that
was still good. Jesus.
Yeah, which is
Although
a shame.
He's never
I think that
done it internationally though.
And you know, I think last year, you know, we maybe could have mentioned something like AD Carry, right? Because Super and Kalist were both doing very well at that point. I think that that's probably taken a hit for this year, but I'm really happy with our junglers right now. That's the main point I want to say.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. It is probably the strongest role right now. I think, yeah, as you said, with AD
Where
Carry,
the fuck is all the mid laners? Please,
well,
mid laner,
yeah,
come forward.
The dearth
and
of,
we are begging you. Please.
Yeah, the dearth of mid laners is a bit concerning. And the fact, and by the way, nothing against him necessarily. I'm not even saying he's bad, but the fact that we are importing like mediocre Koreans is kind of sad as Europeans. I mean, Polby, he's decent, but let's be real, he's not, you know, world bending. And KU, I mean, it's just a bit whatever, isn't it? Like, you'd like to think that we could go back to an era where you'd actually have I mean, almost the saddest thing is that Caps is just not Caps or like prime Caps or even honestly close to prime Caps. He can still pull out some huge performances, as we did see in finals as well, but he's just not the same player. But he's still miles ahead of everyone. Like, he's actually miles ahead of everyone. He can't do it consistently, but he is still by far the best we have to offer. And then there's a Grand Canyon before you get to the next bunch. So that is pretty sad. But I don't know how you fix that. I mean, sometimes to a certain extent, these things are just sort of era-based. You just get lucky. You just get an Xpeke, a Froggen, Alex Each all coming up at the same time. Sometimes you get fucking Day or whatever that was called.
We did replace like generation after generation. This has been the biggest gap between like another talent coming through.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and it's kind of like, obviously terrible example because obviously they're the best of the best. But it's kind of like watching Messi and Ronaldo age at the same time. It's like, well, Caps is still going. Humanoid's just about hanging on. Like, there's nothing. There's nothing actually coming through to replace them anytime soon. So, yeah, it is what it is.
God damn, that's Larson.
Yeah, Anyway, speaking of, all-time greats and important awards and so on, let's talk about MVP, All-Pro, etc. I think we've already sort of gone back and redacted the Finals MVP because that's a joke. Sorry, that's Skewmon. There you go. Congratulations, Skewmon. You are the official Finals MVP because anyone who had eyes can probably agree with that as a consensus pick. So there you go.
One
But
of the
I do want
biggest
to hear.
deaths ever.
Yeah, I do want to hear from you guys. Who is what order will we do this in? Let's talk. Actually, let's just do MVP first because MVP is going to be. No, let's do All Pro first. That makes more sense. So I don't care about Team 2, Team 3, whatever. Screw all that. We're just doing one team, top to bot. Keire, who is in your LEC Versus All Pro team?
But Kana or BB by the end. BB probably blew out more people. Kana probably got more blown out. So BB, Skewmond. Oh, Jesus, it's awful. So it's BB, Skewmond, Caps, Calith, and then support's really hard.
A crime is
It's the
already
choice
been
between
committed.
it's a choice between Busio and Labrov. Those are the
I'll
like
say
you said.
I'll say Busio. But it's close.
Where's Nat
Yeah, because
I know he didn't play as much in playoffs, but surely Nat Nako is a better shout.
No, because
than
here's the
Kana
problem: is BO1 his best period is all in the BO1 stage. It's not real League of Legends. This is where my hatred
Right.
comes forward, right? If they were all BO3s, Rich, right, I'd be fucking singing these praises. BO1s, I say it and I really do mean it. They ain't the 7th seed, Rich. This is okay. Let's change the narrative. The 7th seed. This is the greatest upset in the history of League of
Sure.
Legends. The 7th seed of Europe has just won the LEC. No, nobody's talking like that because we all know it's bullshit, right? And so all those BO1s, yeah, they kind of matter, and he was really sick. Like, it's so fucking. Does he get it? Did BB have more carry games than Nat Nako? Maybe not, but the games were more important. Bro, it's so hard to like go against like finals, upper bracket finals. Like, wasn't Nat Nako better? Nat Nako would be second instead of Kana, maybe.
I'm giving it Nat Nako. I think he was just the best top laner. Like, I
It
think
was
every
just
time he
the bit-
played
but
the
he didn't
game,
play
he was
enough.
just the best player in the server, pretty much. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the one thing you can hold against Nako is how many actual true late games did he carry? And I don't think he did that very much compared to BB or to Kana. I don't think he did fantastic in late games, and that is something you do have to hold against him to a certain level.
Sure.
Yeah,
Well,
BB's got that Rumble game that was fucking crazy.
Hmm.
BB's got like the Yasuo game that was pretty good. He's got like he had another game where he blew someone out. Like I know I was like getting on his horse. I broke it. There's another game I'm forgetting.
I think Nat
On
Nako's
you,
Rumble
Rich,
game was better than BB's Rumble game, honestly. I know it wasn't in.
No,
playoffs,
it's
but-
no, it's not. No, no way. The Rumble game. That by the way, can I just say DPM record? But anyway,
True. Forgot about that.
but I get what you mean in terms of the actual play and like what you did and keeping your team in it. But like he does whiff that ult at the end and it does matter. Like he
Sure.
fucking. That is a stinker to whiff, by the way. Like it is.
It
like,
is a stinker. He's also got a couple of bots on his team.
He does have a couple of bots on his team. You're right.
Yeah, Nymaera, what are you thinking?
All pro. I think I still put Kana. Because no, I do because I think that BB also messed up a bunch of team fights. His Kled wasn't as fantastic. I think he got solo killed a bunch on the Shen. I still think I put Kana. For weight of work across the entire split, it has to be Kana. Magnificent regular split when BB really fell apart. Playoffs, I still think that Kana was one of the least people at fault for it. Finals, yeah, it's a big mark against him, but I don't think that it... I think that BB's first 2 games were excellent. Beyond that, he struggled, so it doesn't bring him above Kana for the entire split for me. So Kana's my top lane. Jungle, Skewmond, no diff. There's just no contest. That guy's just so fucking good. Midline is Caps. Again, I think that a lot of the people who were contesting from last year just didn't step up to the plate. I thought, yeah, he was fine. I thought that Jojo never really came online. So that's that's it really in terms of
yeah.
by default it has to be Caps and Skewmond. AD carry it's Calist, I think. Is there anyone else you can test? I think in regular season, Noah was great. He fell off towards the end, and his playoffs weren't fantastic though. Super lost his team too many games despite his highs being very, very high. I think that Hans Slammer had a poor regular season, and I think in finals he was directly beaten by Kalist. Upset, had a poor team, can really show his best side. Somebody was fine, but nothing special. Yeah, it has to be Kalist again, just by price elimination. Support's the hard one, I suppose, outside of top lane for me. I probably do give it to Labrov. I think that not enough people praise Labrov's contributions to early game skirmishes and rotations for G2. Yeah, he has made mistakes. Don't get me wrong. He's mechanically misplayed more visibly than Busio this split. I think people are hung up on the visible misplays, and he has made them. But I genuinely think that he's been, considering finals as well, was a bit of a nightmare from Busio. I think Labrov needs to be praised more for his early game impact. So it is going to be actually a fairly G2 team. I've got like mid jungle and support, but I think support level of play was kind of iffy this split. Yeah, I think that's probably my team. So my full team would be Canna, Skewmon, Caps, Kalist, and then Labrov.
Yeah, so I'm going Nat Nako in the top lane. I just think I know
Fair play.
I know that they've played like a bunch of playoff series, like more playoff series or whatever, but I think for Broken Blade, that increased his stock. I think actually overall for Canna, if you look back at the whole of playoffs, I actually think his stock got lowered by playoffs, to be honest. I think that his regular season, he was definitely the best. And I think a lot of the dialogue going into playoffs from us and other people was, oh, we're really worried about top lane because Canna might just blow them out and be the win con and, or rather it be the other team's loser con that they have to play against Canna. That didn't really happen, to be honest. Like, I think that Canna, he had some good games in playoffs, but he also had some stinkers. BB had a couple of very good games in playoffs. He also had some stinkers. So again, this is also addition by subtraction, you could argue. But Nako didn't have many stinkers in playoffs, partially because he didn't play the games. But I think
Played
that
game.
better or worse than Broken Blade's Clay game.
Worse.
No.
Yeah.
Broken Blade's Clay game was a disaster.
It was pretty bad.
It was so
yeah.
bad. No, I think Broken Blade. This is the thing. I think Broken Blade.
They can't stop him charging through the team fight.
By the way, we won't get into it, but the casting and narratives around some of those performances were mental. Like Game 5, Hans Sammer, like the way, like if you didn't watch the game and you were just listening to the cast, you think Hans Sammer was like 1v9 that game, by the way. Like, that was really bizarrely casted game of League of Legends. Anyway, yeah, I just think Broken Blade didn't have a good regular season and had a bunch of stinkers in playoffs. He also had a few good games, but am I going to give him best top lane when that's literally what happened? Bad regular season, couple of stinkers in playoffs, also a couple of very good games. That cannot be your CV and you're all pro. So yeah, even though Nako didn't play that much in playoffs, here's just percentage of good games versus bad, and his level of importance for vitality versus BB's over the course of the split, I think is actually night and day. Canna, I think I'd have Canna above BB, but I apply similar logic to Canna. Canna had a much better regular season. Was he better than Nako in regular season? It was close. Like, if you wanted to argue that, I wouldn't shoot you down, but I don't know. And then I actually wasn't impressed with Canna in playoffs. Again, not to say he had a bad playoffs, but I don't think his stock went up the deeper we got into playoffs. So yeah, no, for me, I'm just going Nat Nako. I also think Nat Nako's on a way worse platform, mate. A way worse platform.
Yeah.
Like, Canna's got Yike path into top lane. This guy's got Linsus.
But here's the thing. If you put a gun to my head, okay, I think Nat Nako's the best top laner, right? But the problem is the games actually happen. You know what I mean? Like, this is the issue.
Yeah.
This is the problem of, like, you know what I mean? Like, that with that, like, thing.
I don't think that works against him anyway. I think he's still got the best, like, aggregate. I think he has the best average level anyway. The minute he comes up against...
Okay, you want to hear something great? Okay. The top teams, the actual, like, teams we consider good, okay? How many games do you think Nat Nako won?
I don't care about wins, mate. When I'm assessing individual,
he was like in a position. Okay, he was actually like carrying.
Well, did he carry games that they lost? Like, I mean, I don't
Back
know.
to anyone, like
I have no
against the top
idea.
tier.
I would have to
Yeah,
go
but
back
against the
and
top, I'm looking at it now.
I have no
Against the top
idea.
tier performance, it's not that set.
I have no idea how well or efficiently Lince's path to top, Keire. I just don't know. I don't know.
Bro, I think
I can't know.
Nako's sick, right? Okay, I'm not saying what my point I'm trying to say is like he is a victim of the format. Put it that way.
Sure. I mean, whatever. It's fine. He is my top laner. There we go. Skewmond, obviously.
What, he's gonna sneak Labrov in here in bot lane? Of course he is. Just for fuck.
What do you mean?
I'm just spoiling that right now, boys.
Skewmond
I'm gonna just take all the thing away.
is the jungler. Caps is completely uncontested in mid.
Copy my homework but change it.
Kalist is gonna have to be the AD carry. I mean, again, there's not. What's actually funny is we had a bunch of like best of fives, or 5-game series, right, or whatever. So like the gaps between teams wasn't some massive canyon or something. But when it comes to most of the spots, they're pretty easy to pick. Like top and support really are the only ones there's a conversation about, right? I mean, that's it. Like you cannot even make a case for a different jungler support, jungler AD carry or mid.
You can make a case for Yike over Skewmon. No, I'll do it for you right now. El Yo-Yo when he done it, by the way. So Yike got his team a nut hair away from beating a Caps G2 team with a Korean rookie mid, a fucking change bot lane, and none of the best players at the road except from ADC.
Oh, but Nymaera, do you know what the problem is here? The game's actually happened. And I actually saw
Skewmon
put this guy in the fucking dirt.
But here's the problem, right? When El Yo-Yo does it, he needs games to be like remade. Right? That's all I'm gonna say. Like that's all.
Yeah, but El Yo-Yo's not in the conversation anyway, so he's
no. What I'm saying is, you can make an argument for Yike against like Skewmon, against the totality of it. I wouldn't make it. I think Skewmon was the best. There's a reason those games were so close, mate.
No, sorry. Yeah, because his fucking carries were running it for half the series. Anyway, so yeah, they're uncontested for me. And support. I pick support. I'll go Labrov. There we go. No,
okay.
I think you can. Oh, you could go Busio, but I'm
only trolling you, Rich.
I also, again, not to bang on about it, I really don't like the broadcast narratives that they just every time he does something shit, it's just caveated with. But Busio's the best Western support. La, 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 la. It's like, can we just actually watch the games and just discuss it afterwards? Like, why is it that everything gets dismissed as an uncharacteristic mistake if Busio does it? So he's just allowed to do infinite. But anyone else, if they're not held up as like the best support, it's like an indictment on them as a player if they make a mistake. Like,
I'll give you a thing, right?
Horseshit.
Labrov's support game, his Seraphine support game, was probably like one of his best games. It was really like a really good game. It's basically just went not talked about.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know what I mean? In the sense of, I actually think it's better than his Game 5, okay? But because it's not like, you know what I mean? He's not hitting big 5-man waves and stuff like that. It's just very quietly like good.
I think ultimately though, it's harder to hit like a bunch of multi-man like Pop Blossoms, for example, than it is to play Seraphine well. I'm not saying, by the way, that I thought the Seraphine game was good, but
I'm not sure about that. Nico's pretty fucking disgusting.
Yeah, I'm not sure I totally agree with
Flash,
that.
movement speed, whilst invis, and then you rocket belt, and then when you press R's in it, just gets dragged up into the air like a maniac.
Yeah, well, point made. Anyway, it's still Labrov. So there you go. Part of the counter narrative against this Busio malarkey. Now, MVP. Overall MVP. Now, I understand that people, me and Thorin always argue about this because we just have a different criteria for what MVP is. For me, it is the literal translation of what the words mean, which is who is the most valuable player. For him, he always says he just gives it to the best player, whoever he believes was objectively the best player. So take it in whichever direction you want, or your own direction, of course. Yeah, Keire, what are you thinking?
I'm just laughing. It's like, if you divide value and reduce it to a number, then how much the person contributes to their team as a base number would just give you like the best player. But then Rich is like, but actually as a percentage of the total was to come back there. But here's the thing: there's two answers for this. It's either Rylak or Skewmond. Rylick is in terms of like the delta that he provides. And basically, the problem is BO1s are just fucking dog shit, and that's where he was the best player, unfortunately. And then in playoffs, he was still really, really good, and he almost like went Super Saiyan and carried, but he didn't. But then Skewmon just plays the best League of Legends, and he's also just the best player on G2, which is the best team, and the team doesn't work without him. So I don't know. I think it's Skewmon. I think it's quite clearly Skewmon. I think the second place would be Yike or Kalith.
Here's the problem with the Rylick thing, right? Which is like by my own criteria, as I said, like value given to a team or whatever. Like, are Na'Vi even a playoff team without him, etc. So that's where like the value is. The problem is they needed to do a bit better. Like they lost to Giants in like the first round of playoffs or whatever. It's like, like if they'd gone further, like if they made, like, let's say they'd made it to finals weekend, but they got blown out by KC, went home, and then KC played. Then I'd be like, actually, it probably is Rylick, because if you think about Na'Vi and where they would be without him versus the sort of promised land, or at least something close to.
Yeah, but I think you have to make the same point about Skewmond, right? I think that
no, but this is the thing.
Best. Yeah.
No, but this is the thing. Skewmond is the best player, but also he has one of the biggest deltas, because G2 without Skewmond is not that great. So yeah, I think that this is the thing. Skewmond for me wins in both criteria. He is the best player, and he was the most important player, even relative to his own team strength.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think a thing about MVP for me is that, can you provide something that only you can do? And I think that Skewmon does that. He's the only person with the early game read, which he has. He's the only person that can take over a game kind of single-handedly from the start of the game in Europe right now. I mean, Rilek actually is not too far off that. The problem I have with Rilek is that he is if you think of it as MVP as total percentage towards the team's success, he is so much of it, and I can understand that. But I think Skewmon is not that far off of that, just given how fucking good he is, and is just such a high delta to the next player that I think it has to be Skewmon to me. And that's because jungle being so strong right now too.
If it wasn't a BO1 season or whatever, I think you could also argue Yike was, I think, the problem is like Yike shares a lot of his success with his like ADC, where it's more like a two-man like job, if you know what I mean. In regular season, but then come playoffs, I think Yike's just the best player, maybe except from finals. And then because like G2 beat K3, right? Okay, let me give you an example. Actually, I've got an argument for you. All of Skewmon's like worst matches, and the only matchups he looks human, are all against like Yike. Upper bracket of round 2, it's Yike beats him in every single Yike smite objective. Skewmon, I think, loses something like 7 smites in a row to like Yike, by the way, on objective setups or something like that, right? And so like the head-to-head isn't like that crazy.
Skewmon's still the better player in that series, though. He just loses some 50-50 smites, but
they're not 50-50. They're not 50-50.
But whatever.
Everyone says they're 50-50.
He's still a better player.
No, but that just that just reduces it down to like, oh, they're 50-50s. It's like, they're not really. Like,
no, yeah, sure, but like my point is, you just listed like, oh, and he stole this many things. Okay, but he wasn't as good as Skewmon in that series, so Skewmon was still better at jungle than he was. So that, I mean, yeah, that for me, that's, and also then Skewmon goes on to absolutely shit stomp Elyoya in every single game against MKOI.
He does shit stomp. He does shit stomp Elyoya.
Whereas like Yike versus Elyoya was like much more of like
it was a lot closer. No, I would still say Skewmon. I'm just trying to make the argument for who would be second, or like the counter case. Because here's the thing, like Skewmon isn't that good in the BO1 series, BO1 portion. He just isn't. Right, but it's the bit we all care about the least. Right, and then he ends up being the champion, and he's the finals MVP, and he like basically solo wins 3 games. But like, it's not, you know what I mean.
The thing is, it is actually just Skewmon by a mile, though. Ultimately, like Yike is the second best. It like obviously what Rilek did is like super impressive or whatever. But if you were doing like an actual accurate power rankings of like best junglers, Yike would obviously be second. you'd probably maybe put El Yo-Yo above Rillick. Although that I think you could like argue based on
That's
the split.
that's
Like,
what
that's
you
a
could.
It's a
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, that's more of a conversation.
Yeah, I actually think that like second and third MVP in place like that, that's actually where things get very interesting because you have really tightly contested jungle. I mean, when we were talking about the top 3 jungles, right, we didn't even actually mention Rillick when we probably should have done there, right? Because like it's been really fucking good, right?
Yeah, but I mean, the real question is, no joke, like this is actually a serious question. Do you think if they'd done All Pro and MVP voting for this split, what do you think the odds are of Caps not winning MVP? By the way, I actually would guess that they would give Caps MVP. Like, no joke, I reckon he would win MVP. Which is another reason, by the way, why I'm
No,
glad.
I actually don't think they would because there was so much talk about junglers this split.
Yeah,
Caps
but
is really
Nymaera,
good, but
we just saw him win Finals MVP after that series from Skewon.
yeah, but
So,
that's finals, you know.
I mean, I think I think you're being far too generous with your judging.
maybe.
Actually, would you cut? No, Rich. I went back and looked like my notes, by the way, for like the upper bracket one. It doesn't change the argument. I actually like when I think back on it. Like, by the way, that's the game where I'm just looking there. Like, that's the game where like Kehu is actually griefing the fucking game on Anivia, and Caps has literally got like 6 kills at like 13 minutes.
Oh yeah.
When Skewon does not play well those games, by the way, he makes loads of fucking mistakes. By the way, like there were rather than Yike out jungling them, it is actually Skewon playing poorly. It's the inverse in terms of like Yike does not overcome the best version of Skewon. Skewon comes down, you know what I mean? And like Yike is better than him transgressively. Like Yike doesn't ascend to being better than him. But anyway, I was just clarifying that because it doesn't sound right to me that like when you're saying that. But like anyway, that's by the by.
Oh yeah, I'd have to. For me, as you know, my things blur into one. But I remember thinking that he was.
Bro,
actually
Caps
the
goes
better
fucking
player.
20 and 48 in fucking that BO2.
He
That's
does.
He
kinda
dies
insane.
once.
Jesus. Right. Anyway, that is going to be it for this week, guys. Obviously, the next time you see us, we'll probably be previewing First Stand, I guess. I don't know when that is. Probably, when is that? LPL's not finished yet, so after that. So, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, thank you guys all for watching, and we will see you next time.